Welcome back. We're getting some more breaking news. This is in connection to the diplomatic standoff between India and Canada. And this is a CNN News 18 exclusive, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to Canada moving its diplomats. Now, according to reports, Canadian diplomats had been moved to Singapore and Malaysia before the October 10th deadline. Now, the Canadian side, now this is what we are learning, tried to negotiate with India, but it didn't work. India was very firm on its stand that there should be parity between the diplomatic missions on both sides. Now, before their status ends, they have been moved to other countries by the Canadian government. CNN News 18, remember, reported that India has asked Canada to move 41 diplomats and the deadline was the 10th of October. And before that, what we are learning is that the Canadian government has moved these diplomats to countries like Singapore and Malaysia. I'm joined by my colleague Anand Narasimhan to get more on this piece of breaking news. Anand, over to you.
Now, what happens is outside of Delhi, they had operations in Chandigarh, they had operations in Bengaluru and in Kolkata, and it looks like all the diplomats from here have been now moved to Malaysia and Singapore on an immediate basis. But this also means that the visa services will be affected, and clearly these missions in these areas, in these cities, will now perhaps be working on a very, very skeletal staff or none at all. 41 is not a small number. For 41 diplomats to be asked to be recalled by Bharat, it's a very, very strong message that is also being sent, saying that if you're going to not cooperate and if you're going to continue to try and go ahead with your bluster, then we are also going to try and meet it with perhaps a similar amount of measure, and it is nothing but parity. The staff in Canada of the envoys and of the diplomats of Bharat is a very skeletal one, and it now mirrors the staff that is there for the Canadians. This is also a message to those elements or those people who think that they can misuse the visa norms and the services and also try and move to Canadian soil. The free floating between India and Canada of these elements is something which will also stop. And some very, very strong messaging also going for those whom the MEA spokesperson Arindam Bagchi used the word political interference. That if there were elements within the Canadian diplomacy and the Canadian consulates here in Bharat who were politically interfering or aiding the political interference of certain elements into Bharat's internal affairs, then it's a strong message that this will also not be tolerated anymore. Let us not forget that the diplomatic niceties or gloves off came from the Canadians, from their Prime Minister itself. It was not Bharat that started this.
Right, but Anand, at the same time, as you're pointing out that, so many of these Khalistani elements move from India into Canada using, different visas like student visas. Do you see this as a wider approach to limit the visa options of these elements?
Not just the visa options of these elements, this is also going to put a huge amount of pressure on the Canadian institutions. Canada depends a lot on Indian immigrants into Canada for their labor force, for their and also to contribute to their economy, along with the fact that the student visas, the students who are going to Canada to study, there are a lot of complaints that universities are actually hiring or admitting more students than their capacity, and a lot of students are being left in the lurch. There are a lot of others who now quietly want to come back from Canada and come back into India, and along with that certain unwanted elements, entities would also be coming. So this is also going to put a huge stress and somewhere a certain level of pressure politically and otherwise on the Justin Trudeau administration to not just change tack and change course, but also perhaps publicly retract their statement. No private conversations. What you said out on the floor of Parliament, either prove those claims that you've made or retract them altogether. That seems to be the clear message, while increasing the pressure at multiple levels on the Canadian administration.
Absolutely, an iron fist approach when it comes to countering Canada. I'm also joined by Achal Malhotra, former diplomat on the broadcaster. How do you see these developments coming in when it comes to India's counter to Canada? Now 41 diplomats have been moved to Singapore and Malaysia. As India had said that October 10 deadline, the negotiations from the Canadian side did not work out at all, as India maintains a firm stand.
Well, I think we have not, we are not taking by, their, hello?
So please continue. I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir.
Okay.
Please continue.
No, I think we are not, we are rightly not taken for their face value the kind of statements of late coming from, Canada, including from the Prime Minister Trudeau, that Canada would like to have good relations with India. And, we think this is all hogwash because they are realizing, perhaps they had not expected that India is likely to take such a tough stand and try to plug in all the holes which are possible. And we have not even spared their diplomats in the sense that I'm sure we have a credible information and reasons to believe that their diplomats are indulging in political activities. They are trying to, interfere in our affairs, and whether they are the members of their intelligence agencies or maybe their diplomats who have been given this task. So the signal from our side is very clear that unless you really rein in the anti-India elements and you collaborate and cooperate with us by, agreeing to some of our requests for extradition, you walk the talk. That's very important. And even Americans, when they say that they are trying to nudge us towards, cooperating with the Canadian government in the probe. So we have to tell them also, this cooperation can't be a one-way process. We are ready to cooperate, but then they must also respond to our concerns about the Khalistani activities going on there.
Right.
And the issue is, assuming larger and bigger dimensions about the students going there and the students being pressurized, persuaded to join those kind of movements. We can put up, we can cancel the OCIs, and but if somebody is going on a student visa, that we have no control. We have a control over the passport. Mm-hmm. If we have any suspicion, if we suspect somebody might indulge in anti-India activities while after going abroad, probably we can stop the issue of visa to that individual. But once the individual has gone, then it is the duty of the host government to make sure that they stay within the norms of the law and order, the prescribed law, and their obligations towards India.
Right. And Mr. Malhotra, as India sticks to its red line when it comes to countering Canada, what does this do to Justin Trudeau domestically in Canada? Because he's really going down in the poll numbers over there when it comes to domestic conditions. Does this diplomatic standoff also affect him politically in the domestic arena in Canada?
Definitely, and I don't think he was very popular. Like his government was also on crutches. It depends on support from the Sikh, the Khalistani elements, and in any case, was not very popular. And now you see, the point is when the impact of deteriorating relations between India and Canada would be seen on the Canadian economy, then that would really, when the shoe will start pinching and the local people will realize the kind of wrong policies being pursued by Trudeau are leading to a situation where the revenue has stopped coming in, the labor has stopped coming in. The basic requirement, we generate a huge amount of revenue for them through education alone, the kind of students they are going, and then the recurring expenditure they are incurring in that country. Similarly, the workforce. So all that when will start showing on their economy, I'm sure, the realization will grow at the grassroots levels, and people will begin to, react, and I'm sure his popularity is going to go down day by day.
Absolutely. And this move will hit Canada diplomatically, economically, and as Achal Malhotra is pointing out, it will hit Trudeau politically as well in the Canadian arena. But